Resources Institute. My name is Joe Donahue. I work for a company called Apt Associates, and I will be moderating this webinar today. Terry is an implementer of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition Municipal Solid Waste Initiative. The CCAC Waste Initiative is an international partnership that unites national and local governments, international organizations, and other partners in an effort to reduce emissions of methane and black carbon from the solid waste sector. This webinar is part of a series that Terry is facilitating on behalf of the initiative. Today's topic, marketing proceeds from waste, is of great significance as the government and urban local bodies emphasize the need to promote Swachh Bharat initiatives and the use of products originating from waste. Our speakers for today's webinar include Mr. Ashish Jain and Mr. Michele Giavini. Mr. Jain will discuss barriers, avenues, strategies, and approaches available to help marketing proceeds from waste in India, including compost and refuse-derived fuel, or RDF. Mr. Giavini will present on best practices from other global regions for proceeds from waste, with a focus on compost. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the presentation after the speakers present. If you have questions for the speakers, please enter them in the chat field on your screen. I will now introduce our speakers. Mr. Ashish Jain is a postgraduate in environmental science and the founder director of the Indian Pollution Control Association. He is also a director in RecTech Environment, Avasap Technologies, Air Quality Management Services, Parshvi International, and a founding member of the Society for Indoor Environment and Clean Himalaya. He has more than 15 years of professional experience in the field of solid waste management, air pollution, and environment education. His expertise lies in execution and planning of solid waste management projects for towns, cities, campuses, industries, corporations, and institutions with an articulated environmental emphasis. His professional work encompasses introduction of new technologies related to waste minimization, community engagement, promotion of recycling, and exploring sustainable solutions for a healthy society. Mr. Michele Giavini is a senior expert of the Italian Composting and Biogas Association, a network that supports more than 200 composting and anaerobic digestion plants in generating high-quality compost from more than 5 million tons per year of source-separated organics. Mr. Giavini has more than 15 years of experience in sustainable waste management, promoting best practices across Europe and other global regions. He also runs ARS Ambiente, an Italian consultancy focusing on source separation and treatment of organic waste, supporting both local authorities and private operators. He has prepared integrated waste management plans for regional councils and is involved in international projects funded by the European Union on organic waste management and on the implementation of pay-as-you-throw schemes. He supported the Climate and Clean Air Coalition's waste initiative in a variety of activities, including coordinating the initiative's work in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and he has developed tools and resources to promote organic waste management. And now I will ask Mr. Jain to begin his portion of the presentation. Mr. Jain?
Yeah, as Joy already has already given my brief introduction that we are into this field for last 17 years, and we are working with the community, providing door-to-door collection services and encouraging people to do source segregation, take out the recyclables from the waste, and supporting the recycling industry. And there are a lot of challenges as the today topic is marketing proceed from solid waste. So in India, there is always the issue of quality supply of waste material to the industry, whether it is a waste to energy industry or a recyclable industry. So industries are facing a lot of problem in getting quality waste because we are not segregating our waste at source. So segregation of waste at source is the major issue behind all the present scenario. So IPCA basically promoting or educating people or stakeholder to at least to segregate waste at least into two compartments, biodegradable and non-biodegradable component. We are also trying to educate informal sectors and providing training to them to do secondary segregation, because more you segregate, more value you will add to the waste component. And we experience a lot of problem in getting right kind of market for the RDF compost because of the quality issue. RDF can be used to generate electricity. RDF can be used in waste energy plant, power plant, and pyrolysis to generate electricity and energy. But if the operator of these units are not getting quality waste, they will not accept this in any way. So the processors who are making RDF from the waste are facing huge challenge in marketing this compost, and their entire pollution. They invested several amount of capital in setting up the plant, but at the end they are not able to sell their products. So ultimately those plants has to be shut down, which is not the viable option, which is not the sustainable system to have solid waste management in any city or any country. So what to do to break this barrier? We have to dedicatedly look out the quality issue of RDF, compost, or whatever waste we have. So first of all, segregate into different component and maintain the quality as per the requirement of as per the requirement of your client. If you are supplying this RDF to waste energy, you have to maintain the calorific value above 1100 degrees Celsius, 1100 kilocalorie per kg. So there is a lot of method. You can do shredding of your waste, you can do size screening, you can do magnetic separation, coarse shredding, refining separation. All these methods add a lot of value to your RDF. To avoid the contamination, I would suggest people who are into the collection and transportation, they should restrict the entry of construction and debris waste to the waste. They should avoid the contamination of silt into the waste. Sometimes I have visited many RDF facility and they are also getting dead animals, construction debris, silt, which is which make their entire operation useless. So they have to invest a lot of energy in making RDF. The dry moisture content is very high. So the scenario can be improved or changed if we put a systematic approach from the collection to disposal. I would because I haven't prepared any presentation for today, I would like to answer the queries of the audience, because.
Okay, so I think before Mr. Javini gives his presentation, we can open the webinar up for a few questions from the participants. Are there any participants who would like to share some challenges that they have faced with regard to obtaining quality separated waste for composting or RDF projects?
See, these composting plant and the RDF plant are not getting homogeneous kind of waste. The waste quality is very different. The waste quality is vary from region to region. It depends on the cultural activity, it depends on the lifestyle. There are a lot of factors affecting the waste quality. So before preparing or installing any composting plant, any RDF plant, we should very well aware about the quality of our waste. What is the composition of our waste? So maximum time we do these kind of mistake, like we set up the RDF plant or composting plant without knowing the actual characteristic of our waste. What is the carbon content of organic waste? What are the nitrogen content of our waste? And is there any heavy metal contamination in our waste? So these things has to be regularly checked. check. There should be a system through which we can monitor and evaluate our waste quality. And if there is any uh, discrepancy in the quality, we should regulate those quality.
Well,
So my point of view, quality of the RDF and compost is the real challenge in getting the right kind of market, because people are afraid to use compost made from the waste, because they have fear that it may contain heavy metals, it may contain some pesticides, and and with respect to RDF, they are afraid of low calorific value kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So having a full characterization of the waste stream before initiating a project is critical.
May I ask you a question directly, Mr. Jain? So, do you have any successful experience in setting up source separation of organics in cities, I mean in residential areas, or rather from markets, because it's one of the most important challenges in order to assure a high quality of the final product?
We do not have a 100% success story in the cities, but we do have some success ratio. Like we did a lot of projects with the community and educate community on source segregation. So our maximum success rate is 53%. So we targeted some population of city, like we did one project in Gurgaon, and we are continuously doing door-to-door collection services. So in our system, many people are doing segregation at source, and then 53% of our consumers are doing segregation, and we are still educating them or creating awareness among these people to participate more on source segregation. We are also training our waste pickers to do secondary segregation. So we want to reduce the retention time of segregation. The earlier you segregate, the better is the quality of waste you are supplying to the recycling industry. So in our system, we are trying to segregate at least 85% of the waste, and only 50% of the total waste reaches to the landfill side, which are non-recyclable inert. And recently we launched one project called WeCare, which is the EPR of Plastic Waste Management Rule 2016, in which some brand owners are supporting this project. We are segregating multi-layered plastic waste, which has a very high calorific value. And we are supplying this MLP, multi-layered plastic waste, to cement kiln industry and waste to energy. So because this multi-layered plastic waste is segregated at the secondary segregation level, so contamination is very low. It is purely MLP. It's not contaminated with any kind of silt or construction debris kind of waste. Moisture content is very low. So you can say only 10% moisture is there. So when we supply these MLP waste to waste energy plant and cement industry, their operational cost has go down very drastically, because this calorific value of MLP is around 3100 kilocalorie per kg. And they were struggling to get waste of calorific value near 1000. So they are very happy. Their production rate goes up, their operation cost go down. So, and we are able to have a market for our MLP waste. People are dying to get MLP waste from us. So the only matter is the quality. If you maintain the quality of your waste material, there will be a buyer.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Jain. Unless we have other questions from attendees at this time, I think perhaps we could ask Mr. Javini to begin his presentation, because I think several of the topics that he will discuss relate to these exact challenges, the challenges of obtaining quality waste from source separated waste for organic waste management projects. And maybe we can, based on Mr. Javini's presentation, we could have some more fruitful discussion at the end of this webinar about how we might best practices for addressing some of these challenges with regard to quality. Okay, so we have a question from an architect, and the question is, I have to plan compost plants before the project is established. How does one plan in the absence of real data? For example, if you do not have good data on the characteristics of the waste stream, how can you go about approaching planning for a project? Mr. Jain, do you have any thoughts?
The question is very good question, because if you need to plan anything, a plant, you should have a realistic data. But if there is no occupant, so you can have just an estimation what kind of people are going to live in that city or town. What would be the, you will be aware, you would be aware about the geographical condition and climatic condition, the lifestyle. You should have some rough idea about the economic strata. This city or this society belongs to high income group people or middle income group people or upper middle group income people. Based on their economic strata and lifestyle, the cultural activity, you can have some rough idea, and you can take 20% buffer zone. Like if the per capita waste generation rate is 2 kg, so you can easily calculate the total amount of waste. 50% you can take compostable or organic waste. So this hypothetical calculation has to be done before planning this kind of facility.
Thank you. Give your presentation, and then we can resume the question and answer period after your presentation.
Okay, very good.
So we need you to share your screen.
Yeah.
And great. Okay, we are ready.
Yeah. Okay, very sorry for the loss of connection, and I will go on talking about some basics of the composting and organic diversion with a worldwide approach. We all know these charts. They represent the organic content of municipal solid waste, and we can see that it's very variable. According to the income of the countries, we have an organic content ranging from kind of 30% in high-income countries up to 64% in low-income countries. And I also found in an article some figures about India, about Delhi, and I found out that actually organic content decreased over time, reaching like 38% in 2002. But there's one peculiar thing that I want to point out. The organic content in waste reaching the landfill is much higher than this 38%. That's because informal recyclers collect valuable dry fraction, thus increasing the percentage of biodegradables up to 74%, which is an impressive amount. So basically, we are talking about a fraction of waste which generates the highest environmental impact when landfilled, so it has to be diverted, represents the highest share in municipal solid waste recyclables, so it has to be collected to achieve higher recycling targets. But the paradox is that it is not targeted by the collection, for instance, of informal recyclers, and the viable and effective collection scheme is not easy to set up. And most importantly, it does not benefit from any kind of incentive scheme. Think about the extended producer responsibility schemes that are commonly in place in Europe or even worldwide. They are schemes in which the producer of packaging pay for the collection and recycling of their waste, their packaging. And this is not in place for bio-waste. But moving to a worldwide perspective, there is something that I always like to point out, which is the size increase in large cities over time, and this is astonishingly quick. Look at this chart. This is 1960, and these are cities with a population with red dots population higher than 10 million people. 1960, 1980, 2011, 2025. Look especially at India or Southeast Asia, how many cities are growing more and more rapidly. So we have to focus on all possible solutions for urban areas, and particularly to solution addressing the so-called transitional mega cities. They are kind of cities exploding and with difficulties to set up complicated collection and waste treatment schemes. So, talking about the treatment options, let's look at all the options for treating the organic fraction of municipal solid waste. In this scheme, I would like to point out an important dichotomy that will guide us through the rest of the webinar, which is the difference between source-separated organic fraction, and I appreciate that it was mentioned before, source separation is key in order to get a clean organic fraction and subsequently a clean quality compost, and organic fraction that is mechanically sorted with end-of-pipe solutions like what we call in Europe MBT, mechanical biological treatment, which generates actually a biostabilized fraction or even a biostabilized waste if it doesn't comply with the quality of a compost. It is sometimes called compost, and even in India I see in the regulation that there is no basic difference if compost is proceeding from source-separated organic or mechanically selected organic. If it complies with fertilizer regulation, it could be considered compost, but with some limitations. These are the most common limitations that we find out when talking about the application of compost from mixed waste with respect to compost from food and garden waste. The latter being applied potentially in every field, ranging from agriculture to private gardening, substrate preparation, soil improvers. The first fraction, which is biostabilized compost, could be mostly used in landscape restoration, recovery or degraded space, or revegetation of public works, and so on, with a limited application in agriculture. Typically, regulations allow the use in agriculture only for non-food crops, for instance, or for so-called one-off application in order to avoid the possible accumulation of contaminants. Well, and I investigated a little bit about the new treatment plants built in India, and I found out this mass flow chart from the original environmental impact assessment for the Narela Bawana integrated municipal solid waste facility to be constructed in Delhi. I guess now it's in operation, and there I see that there is a significant amount of organic fraction potentially collected from good quality sources. I mean, markets and commercials, like 350 tons per day, but also 150 tons coming from organics mechanically selected from mixed waste. I don't know if these two sources are then separated and treated separately in the composting facility. Probably no, it's not. If not, well, there is something to be pointed out, because this mixing of high quality and low quality sources, although probably helps to generate a medium quality compost acceptable in agriculture, hinders actually the perception of the two different qualities of these two products. Now let's have an insight on the Indian regulation on solid waste management. I looked at 2016 rules, and I actually noticed that it tends to favor the promotion of decentralized composting plants. As you can see, preference shall be given to for on-site processing or to decentralized processing to minimize transportation, which is true actually. But this leads us to a discussion about the opportunity of having centralized or decentralized facilities. There are various policies in middle and low-income countries promoting both of these approaches, and we will look at advantages and disadvantages of those. Some key consideration: well, the decentralized approach is clear. Food waste is 75% water, so we want to avoid high transportation costs for this fraction. Decentralized plants can be built quickly. They can engage communities, helping them in changing the mindset towards waste management. And they probably could sell compost at a higher price if they reach a high quality. On the other side, centralized plants benefit from economies of scale, so they can afford pre- and post-treatment equipment in order, for instance, to remove impurities like plastic contamination. They can play a more important role in diverting more organics from landfill. Possibly they could benefit from carbon credit support in some cases. And paradoxically, it could be better to have one centralized plant than 1,000 decentralized facilities inside a mega city that may be suffering from this NIMBY, not in my backyard syndrome. But there are a lot of boundary conditions affecting the choice of composting technology, starting from landfill gate fee, land price. We know that inside urban areas, land price is really high. Tolerance to other nuisance, transportation costs for sure, compost market value, the quality of bio-waste, and also the availability of bulking agents, because compost cannot be done only with food waste. We need some other kind of materials to create a correct mixture. These are examples of composting at different scales, ranging from home composting, quite spread around the world. This is another example of home composting. These are so-called microplants or community-based composting. This is an example taken from low-income countries. These are decentralized plants in Europe that can be managed very easily with just a tractor. And then we have modular industrial plants like this one, or even enclosed in building, in vessel, centralized plants. A basic decentralized composting model is quite spread in Southeast Asia and quite spreading around the world. It's basically designed to treat up to 10 tons per day organic waste. It's a box composting system with concrete perforated pipes, and it works quite well actually. And these are large-scale composting and their key issues. Basically, while treating organic fraction in the open air, you could suffer from odor emissions, so you need from closed buildings. The input of bio-waste quality is really important, so you need pre- and post-treatment in order to get a high-quality compost. And in Europe, we use some tools in order to do that, like the use of compostable bags and most portable sensitization campaigns. While getting to the market of compost, I see that it's a sensitive argument in India now. I would share some experiences from Europe, where we have a well-developed market for compost. First of all, let me tell you that all compost we generate in Europe finds a final destination, especially high-quality compost. And one of the biggest market is agriculture, directly used into agriculture. But note that the price for selling, let's say, applying compost to the soil in agriculture is really low, like 303 euro per ton. There are other market segments like landscaping, topsoil mix preparation that could benefit for higher prices, but actually they are limited market sector. So the primary sector is still agriculture, and there is still wide potential for the use of compost in all these sectors. Think about, for instance, peat substitution, organic agriculture, and so on. It is true that transportation to the final usage is key in this case, because actually, yes, transportation not only of the organic fraction to the composting plant, but also of compost to the final agriculture area is actually could be actually complicated, especially in some mega cities where the production could be even too much to be used inside urban or peri-urban territory. Let's look at the compost versus mineral fertilizer comparison. Frankly speaking, the net financial value of compost is 100 times less than mineral fertilizer if we talk about volume or weight. And the content, just looking at the content of nitrogen, potash, and phosphorus, the value of 1 ton of compost is actually around 10 euro, which is roughly 100 times less than urea or NPK fertilizer, chemical fertilizer. But we have to keep in mind that there are a lot of neglected benefits, starting from improved soil tilth, effect on disease, increased macroorganism presence into the soil, water retention, that in the long term provides further financial value to this soil improver. In Germany, they have made a calculation, for instance, taking into account also the substituted supply cost of humus via green manuring, which is a common agricultural practice in order to improve fertility, organic fertility of the soil. So we get to a higher value, including these benefits, like 22 euro per ton of fresh matter. This is a summary of all the other benefits of composting to the soil, starting from carbon sequestration, which affects global warming. This is another important issue. Increased crop yield, soil moisture content, and so on. Looking into a greenhouse gas approach, the value of giving back carbon to the soil, like so-called carbon sequestration, is ranging from 10 to 300 kilos per ton. So, taking into account that we also have to keep in mind that the carbon offset market is kind of hampered recently, and the carbon credit dropped below $10 per ton. This has to be taken into consideration. Now let's go to policies, and we will go quite quickly in order to reserve some time for final questions for sure. Policies to support source separation of organics and composting. Let's look at one thing, one important thing. The typical revenues of a composting plant are not from compost sale. In Europe, it's just 5% of the total revenue of a plant is compost sale, while the gate fee accounts for 95%, and also in other regions of the world, as you can see in these charts. So this is the decision. Should we make gate fee more attractive, like giving subsidies to the construction of composting facilities, incentives, or introducing a landfill tax, for instance, or should it be better to promote compost market, giving subsidies to the marketing of compost like in India, or to land application, or through green public procurement, for instance? In India, the decision has been to support the so-called city compost by giving an incentive, quite a high incentive in my opinion. It's around $23 per ton of compost marketed. And this is a quite peculiar case study because almost nowhere in the world it has been supported with such an amount, to my experience. I look at the report prepared after the implementation of this regulation, and there are some kind of discussion and issues that emerge, like farmers not being very keen to purchase compost, as by paying a little bit more they could buy a bag of urea. They know that the benefits will be visible only after 2 or 3 years, and the committee notes that segregation of waste at household level is very crucial in order to have a high quality compost. Another note, another statement, many of the marketing companies trying to market this compost has failed to achieve their marketing target recently. So we have to explore new opportunity like adding micronutrient to compost or explore innovative promotional schemes. Now let's come to some suggestions for the European experience I may share with you. First of all, improve the image of compost. There is lack of awareness about compost, about what it is, about the comparison between it and chemical fertilizers. There is a competition with chemical fertilizer, and in most cases, let's get back to the suggestion from the European experience. I guess you have seen this slide, and how to improve quality, the visibility of compost by quality assurance schemes. First of all, be clear, quality compost is different than biostabilized from mixed municipal solid waste. Just quickly, you can look at this chart about the content of lead in final compost from MBT, which most of the time is higher than threshold limit in order to be considered a quality compost. There are also data from India from past experiences. It's not always easy to maintain a good quality compost with mixed waste. Okay. Okay, there is also an increasing cost if you have a high input contamination in the composting plant. We have to remove plastics and other contaminants, and this can be done with higher pre-treatment and post-treatment costs, and this is exponential. So we have to take into account that source separation is key in order to have less treatment costs. MBT should be transitional. What does this mean? MBT facilities should be designed to produce compost from mixed waste and easily converted into high quality composting plants. So we can start from MBT or even start from landfill bans and taxes. Then if there are subsidies for programs for source separation of organics, we go for high quality compost facilities, and then maybe we go for anaerobic digestion as a final stage if there are subsidies for renewable energy and possibly biomethane. Most importantly, reward and inform citizens. Citizens must be informed and sensitized about the final destination of their waste. The misconception that an end-of-pipe facility can do everything by separating all fraction and generate a high-quality product is dangerous, because doing this, you are telling citizens not to separate at home, basically, while we want to deliver the opposite message. Like in this case, this is from India. Set up source separation of organics and possibly set up incentive schemes aimed at supporting pioneer experiences. Even keeping municipalities challenged. Look quickly at this incentive scheme that has been put in place in Sardinia, Italy. Simply, municipalities without source separation of food waste had to pay more, to pay a higher landfill gate fee, and this amount, this overcharge, was given back to municipalities doing source separation of food waste. And these incentive schemes led to the increase of recycling rate in all municipalities of this region from less than 10% up to 60% in every municipality in 5-7 years. Some other best practices. Now in Italy we have 60 million inhabitants, we have 40 million people with source separation of organics, and we are producing 1.8 million high quality compost. With some good case studies like Milan, 1.3 million people with door-to-door collection, food waste being collected in compostable bags, and 85 diversion of food waste. This is our compost. We are generating compost from either from aerobic composting, but also from anaerobic digestion and composting. And this is an interesting chart for you. The level of mineral fertilizer used in agriculture decreased over time, and at the same time compost-based soil improver use increased up to almost the same level. Also, there are new projects in Europe exploring new opportunities for the valorization of bio-waste. I'm member of this European project, Waste for Think, in which a Greek partner is investigating the possibility of generating either biochar, pellets, or co-digestion with nappies by using source-separated food waste. The generation of biomethane is quite interesting, especially because we did the calculation and we could potentially fuel all collection vehicles that are collecting any kind of waste simply by fueling them with biomethane generated from food waste. So it's a perfect circle, or so-called circular economy. And that's why a couple of years ago we set up an event with the DeLorean from the movie Back to the Future, in which that movie, you remember, that car was powered with food waste, and that seemed like really an oddity and something to be coming really in the future. But we rented a DeLorean in an anaerobic composting facility, and then set up a press conference and everything. So, coming to the conclusions, mixed waste composting can be a transitional solution, but be aware of the adverse effects like bad acceptance, quality to be monitored, especially if this product is subsidized. It's better to act on gate fees by introducing a landfill tax, but with an appropriate return by promoting, for instance, front-runner municipalities in addition to compost market, and aim at introducing source separation schemes of organic, starting from the easy generator like markets, and for sure sensitize and involve citizens. Thank you again, and sorry again for the interruption.
Great, thank you, Michele. So we have a comment here, but I think it may lead to some discussion. There was a comment that perhaps the best use of compost would be for urban agriculture projects. There's a suggestion that all new urban projects could have the possibility of introducing agricultural activities or urban greening projects that incorporate compost. Michele, maybe do you have any examples of existing projects?
For sure, urban agriculture is quite relevant, but let me tell you frankly, it doesn't have the potential of absorbing all the amount of organic waste if it should be separate collected. Think about a mega city like Delhi. If we should collect and source, separate, collect, and compost all the organic fraction generated, the compost generated would be for sure a higher amount than what could be potentially used in urban projects. So definitely we would look at peri-urban areas or agricultural areas outside the city, and this implies transportation cost and so on.
Mm-hmm. We have another question for both speakers, and this has to do with determining whether it's more appropriate or more sensible to process food waste in anaerobic digesters rather than transporting the food waste to compost facilities. I think this is perhaps, how would you compare the benefits of maybe decentralized anaerobic digesters or biogas projects versus a centralized compost facility? Are there different fractions of the organic waste stream that you would direct to each type of project?
So you mean decentralized AD facilities like those developed at micro scale in low-income countries? Yes, I can comment on that because I've looked and visited directly some of these schemes in Tanzania also that are experiencing this respect. Micro AD plants in order to generate gas for kitchen use, and it's actually an Indian technology, so it's interesting. Well, again, it's just a matter of economies of scale and amounts. This kind of micro digesters could actually work with some problems. Actually, there are some operational problems. Could work, but again, thinking about very densely populated urban areas, it's not actually feasible to have thousands of these micro biogas plants, in my opinion. So again, maybe the comparison should be between centralized composting and centralized AD, which is another solution. For sure, these two solutions are costly, and they require some basic operational steps to be done, like setting up a proper incentives to this biogas to be probably used either for electricity or directly into the grid. I don't know if Mr. Jain, do you have any other comments on this micro AD plant?
One of the challenges that I've heard also is that with biogas projects, anaerobic digesters, unless you have a very pure feedstock coming into the system, you run the risk of having to shut down the system because there is silt or dirt getting into the feedstock that causes problems for the machinery. Is that's less of a risk with compost because in most cases you're not using highly technical equipment, but certainly those sort of impurities impact the quality of the compost at the end.
Yeah, definitely. There are two risks. In anaerobic digestion, this contamination leads to blocking of the digesters, for instance, or any kind of major issues. That's true. And in order to avoid this, you have to remove a lot of contaminants, either in pre-treatment or in post-treatment, leading to a high amount of organic fraction ending up to landfill again. This is less true in composting. Let's say we could allow a little higher amount of this contaminant get to the final composting stage, but if we want to deliver compost to agriculture, like in the Indian situation where compost is subsidized if marketed to agriculture, in this case we need a high final quality in terms of heavy metals, for instance. So we probably have more problems in micro contaminants than in macro contaminants. but we have the same problem in both cases. So the quality of the input feedstock is key.
Mm-hmm. And perhaps could you also comment on the use of liquid fertilizer coming out of AD projects and potential applications?
Yeah, exactly. Having said that the input feedstock is key, there are countries in which digestate is used directly on fields, like the UK, for instance, with some quality standards, taking into account that, liquid digestate has a quite interesting fertilizing property, but it's not compost. It doesn't give organic benefits to the soil. Again, it's liquid, so it requires transportation of water in order to move from the anaerobic centralized facility to the final crops. So, this can be done with some limitation. We suggest, from the Italian experience, to do a short post-composting phase in order to give compost to the soil and not directly digest it. Also because a lot of microplastics can stay inside the liquid digestate if not treated properly.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, we have just about reached the end of our 1-hour webinar period. We did have a final question on what are the various programs from the government of India regarding the use of waste, and is it possible to provide cost-effective technology to rural and urban individuals for efficient use of waste? Mr. Jain, if you have a response that you could provide very quickly, that would be very useful. But I think I would refer the question or the commenter to Terry's website on the waste initiative project they are implementing. There are some good resources there, and I will post the link in just a moment. But Mr. Jain, do you have any thoughts on best places to look for information?
Yeah, recently there are a lot of development in the waste management sector, and I would thanks to our Prime Minister Modi, who started the Swachh Bharat mission. So there are a lot of talk and initiative taken by the government of India and the state government. They are planning to bring the ULB's municipality in the core area. They're already in the core area. The pioneer responsibility for managing waste belongs to ULB, but there are a lot of work is going on how to strengthen the municipality, and what is the government is working to provide solution to the end products like waste to energy plants generating electricity. If there is no buyer for the electricity, what they will do? So now recently government has issued a circular that every state which have this waste to energy plant has to buy waste energy from waste to energy plant at the rate of 6.5 rupees to 7 rupees per unit. Even though they have the surplus quality, the state government linking with the fertilizers, if anybody producing compost, they can sell their compost to the fertilizers company, respective to if they maintain the quality. Quality is the major parameters. If they maintain the quality, they can sell their end product to the fertilizers company. And there are subsidies schemes available. You need to explore with the local authorities. They are providing subsidies on, I think, 1,500 per ton to use your biomass to generate compost. And there are a lot of scheme available on the website. Hello?
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that is all the time we have today. I thank everyone for their participation, especially our speakers, Mr. Ashish Jain and Mr. Michele Giavini. Thank you both for providing your expertise and perspective on this very important issue. And thank you to everyone who joined in today. Have a good evening.